right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Steve Schreader. You guys have probably saw me last week on Friday for the Skijoring presentation, but tonight I am here with my partner in crime, Mr. Eli Nord,
Hey.
who, of course, we both did the presentation or the trip 2 years ago in 2018 that I originally dubbed, and we together did the Ode to Minnesota trip.
God, feels like
It, every time we talk about it, it feels like we just got back, which is funny because like we literally just did this 2 years ago, and it was interesting is that was the 20th, like it was like a week ago or 2 weeks, a week and a half ago. It was the year anniversary of when the film premiered.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's pretty cool to kind of see the after effects of the trip and kind of how we've kind of gotten through the last 2 years, especially this year. Having done this trip in 2018, but also just kind of all the new ideas we got coming on, and we'll talk a bit about those after we show the film. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce the film. Many of you that may have not been at one of our presentations, I think prior, I think the last one we did was
last fall.
Last fall, yeah, we showed the film, and because this last spring we didn't have one. So if you didn't make it to the presentation in fall of 2019, or haven't had a chance or didn't even know there was a film about our trip on YouTube, we're going to go ahead and show that film for you guys here as a presentation. Then we're pretty much going to talk a little bit about kind of what we are doing now in regards to the trip, and then pretty much allow you folks to kind of provide some Q&A. We'll also be maybe laughing, and we'll keep the speakers on so you guys can hear us laugh and go, oh yeah, I remember that, while the film's going on. Yeah. But I do want to make a quick shout out to Brenda Bakarski, who did the film, and her company, Adventure Minnesota Films, and all the crew that helped out with the film, both in production and filming as well as post-production. It's a fantastic film. Really enjoy it. And I hope you guys do too. So if you would, please stick with us here. We're going to show the film. Hopefully this works. And we'll let you guys enjoy it here. So yeah, that was the Old Minnesota film. We Eli and I were kind of talking during the actual research, because we were actually just saying that neither of us have actually, when we saw it at the premiere, and then we saw it when we presented last fall after the film showing, but neither of us had actually just sat down and watched it together.
Yeah, together. Yeah.
Really. So
I mean, we were there, so.
Yeah, I mean, but it was kind of every time we watch it, and we both mentioned it, so we watch it at least once or twice a month. So, so if you guys have questions, we'd love to hear them. Sorry, I'm looking at the screen to see if there's any questions that came up. But one thing that we would like to mention to folks is that, of course, we did a trip in 2018. The film that Brenda and Adventure Minnesota Films did, and also a shout out to John Reamer with John Reamer Associates. They're the ones that put the money together to help fund the filming of the Old Minnesota film, amongst other films that Brenda has done. So, John, if you're watching, we really appreciate it.
So we've got a question here.
Yeah.
Any gear that you forgot and got brought up, or gear that wasn't sent back due to failure or lack of? Oh my gosh. Okay, I can answer this.
You can answer this? Okay.
So as far as the gear is concerned, biking up took way too much gear. The paddling, we were pretty dialed in, but we unloaded a ton of useless weight halfway through. My dad took it all back. And a lot of that was in preparation for the Grand Portage. But there was a lot of gear. Like I had a hammock with me. I didn't need that, right? And that's a good 2-3 pounds right there. The really big turnover with gear was backpacking. And we started way too heavy, and just every single day or every 3 days when we get into town, we'd unload stuff. I know when we got to Silver Bay, I had a friend who lived in town, and we put a bunch of stuff in a box and had it sent back down home. Just to, and nothing in particular, just whatever we decided we didn't use. If we didn't use it every day, you didn't need it.
Yeah, but by the time we got to Silver Bay, switching the backpacker part, if we realized like, okay, I have not used this the entire trip. And I don't, because as you get closer to Duluth and even get past Duluth, I mean, it's still a wilderness trail, but you're so much closer to civilization that if things go awry, you can relatively take care of it pretty quickly. But there were things that it's like, okay, I have not used this thing, whatever it is, gadget, package of whatever. Or we have, we have another cache of food coming up. We don't need this much food. So
Yeah,
same with fuel. I mean, we weren't using that much fuel, which I mean
is a plus.
was a plus.
Then we had
But
all this extra
yeah,
fuel.
so we unloaded a lot of that kind of stuff. Things that we realized we weren't necessarily going to need or need to be used at all for the second half or third of the trip. So
And what's interesting is like we have been on plenty of long distance trips where we know how to ration our supplies, but until you get out there, sometimes we're still learning all the time. It doesn't really matter how often we go out. But we got another question. What makes and models of boats did you use? So we used North Stars. We used North Star solo canoes, and I had a Trillium in the lighter layup, the Kevlite, and with carbon rails, which and then you had
I had a Northwind Solo from North Star, which was their black lighter, the carbon fiber Kevlar blended composite, and then I wasn't too concerned with weight, and I'm a woodworker, so I wanted wood on my trip just because, at least personally, I felt the black light whole boat with the wood trim just looks so much better. And that's just the boat I've always wanted, is that one. And this is a great opportunity to do that, both to show off that solo boat, but also get a boat that I knew I was going to keep. The other thing I would say too is the reason that we went with solos over tandem is that, well, one, we knew, well, at least initially, we knew we were both going to be bringing dogs.
Right.
Plus, we had all of our gear, and so yeah, we could have gone with like a huge like Northwind 20, but then it would only be kind of highlighting one of the models that North Star makes, and with the idea of the trip kind of having that brand mentality of wanting to show off a number of Minnesota oriented brands, we felt that having two boats that we could show off in the film and along the trip versus just one made it much more of a viable relationship with North Star. So
and I gotta say, like the North Star boats were so seaworthy. I mean, there was plenty of times we were in like 3-foot waves out on Rainy Lake, and you feel very small, and the North Star boats just go with it. It's just you feel a lot safer.
Yeah, I mean, there was that one mishap on Gunfoot Lake, but that was more of user egotistical error versus the actual boat. I mean, I felt super. I mean, that's why on Gunflint we started to part around, because I felt so comfortable in that boat, and it felt so seaworthy that I didn't really feel like I couldn't do all that fun stuff.
We got another question. Was the paddle portion all flat water, or were there rivers? There was like a little bit, but we didn't have any we didn't even get to class 1. Okay, there was no white water. It's the boundary waters.
I mean, there were some rivers we were on.
Yeah.
Like we were on the Granite River for a while. Obviously we did the Pigeon River.
Yeah.
But
nothing that required any kind of technical paddling.
No, and most of the rivers up, at least in the boundary waters area, are pretty low key for. I mean, if anything's bigger than a class 1, you're going to end up just porging it anyway.
Yeah, you're just walking around.
So
because in a wilderness situation, you're not prepared to take the risk. You shouldn't. But and then also you want to know how many portages were there in addition? I don't know. I mean, it felt like we paddled way more than we portaged, because along the Voyageurs Highway, it
It's
is
pretty big.
primarily water. I mean,
It's pretty big lakes. I
Yeah,
mean, you're
so
talking about some.
we
you know,
were lucky and really like pleased when we would get to a portage because
Yeah.
we would spend up to 4 hours paddling before getting to a
It
portage.
would definitely bring up the monotony of paddling. But
Yeah.
you know, I don't think we actually even added up the rods of portages that we did. I mean,
know-
obviously the Grand Portage is gonna
Yeah.
take a huge chunk of that, but it wasn't very many. And even the portages that are on the Voyageurs Highway are still pretty tiny.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
60, 30,
I mean,
90 rods.
I think the longest portage that we had in addition to the Grand Portage was the Arrowhead Portage, which was like 260 or 320 or something like that.
Yeah. We had a couple portages that were a mile.
Yeah.
The
But
one, the one into Basswood, and then
Yeah.
the one.
the one in Arrowhead,
and
right,
Arrowhead.
on Receptor High to Land. But I mean,
Um,
obviously the Grand was the culmination of our
Yeah.
portaging experience.
I
but-
could have done with more portages. I'll tell you that right
Yeah,
now.
I would agree.
I feel like I paddled way too much.
Yeah,
with
especially on
portages.
like early in the lakes, like, you know, we were in Voyageurs, so, you know, Rainy Lake's obviously humongous. Even Namakan is also a pretty big lake. Loch LaCroix is a huge lake with not many portages on it because you're just doing a giant U.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of lakes like that where there wasn't too many portages. So we didn't have to worry too much about.
And those
that.
portages were pretty flat too.
Yeah,
You know, that's the other thing. There's parts of the boundary waters where the portages go straight up and they go straight down and they're super rugged. And along the Voyager Highway, it was pretty tame. I mean, I don't remember ever having a portage where I was really intimidated or
Mm-mm.
had to be ultra careful, you know.
no, I mean, there's some, like, even just recently I did an October trip and I mean, there are portages that go basically straight up and down like that. And you go straight down.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of the portages that we did along the Voyageurs Highway were pretty straightforward and flat. Even the Grand, even like that one is just long, but it's still relatively flat. It's not very long at all.
Yeah, keep the questions
Keep the
coming.
questions coming.
Otherwise, we're just gonna sit and BS
and-
about the trip together. And,
Yeah. One thing we were talking about too, that gets asked in the film that I brought up to Eli earlier, is I'm not surprised, but I am surprised that we didn't fight at least once.
yeah,
I mean, we talk about in the film, like the independent nature of the trip and kind of both of us kind of, you know, especially the biking kind of set the stage for that of being able to kind of do our own thing, kind of be in our own world if we were experiencing some stuff. But I mean, and we both talked about this, like, I mean, you mentioned your experience in paddling. I know there were times like on the backpacking part, I was just getting frustrated with certain things, but it was like, well, it's just me being dumb and stupid, and I'll just deal with it when I get back to camp. And by the time I got back to camp, it was fine.
So we
One
got another
question.
question. What extra gear did you end up packing for the dogs? Did they have beds or sleeping mats, boots? That is a really excellent question. So it was August and like
Yeah.
early September, so it wasn't terribly cold. However, they had their own harnesses with their own little saddlebags. Senna had her own little bedroll. And I had blankets for Dio and stuff like that, that it was so light, I just packed it. But they carried their own food for the most part. There wasn't a need for boots. I mean, the terrain was pretty easy.
Yeah, and I mean, so I based a lot of my planning for the trip, at least for Senna, based on what I had, my experiences on the Border Route Trail, because I'd done the Border Route Trail with Senna many years ago. And so I did a lot of the planning based on that. So I knew from her experience in that, I wasn't going to need booties, although I did have them, but I didn't bring them. I knew we were going to be getting into those really cold temperatures, but she was going to need them. And on the trail, I mean, she'd been on plenty of body water strips, so I knew just from that, as well as the border route, she was going to be fine. And then I knew I was going to bring a bedroll for her, but I didn't want to bring like a full sleeping bag or a pad or a mat or anything, because that was just going to be too bulky. And the bedroll I had was just it was basically I had, for the paddling part, I had an extra blanket for her in case it did get cold or if she was in the water and I got cold at night. But I threw in my pack, but she had her own little Gore-Tex or Gore Windstopper blanket that she carried. But on the backpacking part, that's all she had was just like Gore Windstopper blanket that she just strapped to her back on her harness and off she went. But other than their food,
We didn't do PFDs,
we didn't bother with PFDs.
didn't need them,
No.
but,
Yeah, other than like, the food, they had their own water, and then, I mean, a few extra things like leash and,
those little fold-out bowls.
yeah, little full of bowls.
Yeah.
I had an extra like a fleece jacket
Yeah.
in the pack for sending.
They were pretty low maintenance.
They're
though.
pretty low maintenance, yeah. I barely bought anything for this last October trip, and we had 25-degree weather, and Cindy was just happy as a clam wrapped up in one blanket, so.
I really am excited to answer this. What food would you want more of, and what was a waste
Waste
to
to bring.
Okay, so first of all, we had some buddies that had this hot cereal, and we never made it. Like we always we're gonna make it.
What the wild rice?
It had like wild rice
yeah,
and like
I think they
seeds
made
and
it,
stuff
yeah.
in it. We never made it, but
Yeah.
Trailtopia was so
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Like I never got tired of it. We ate that for
Every
how-
night.
every night
Every night.
for like
Yeah.
6 weeks.
It was only, I don't think, there was only a few nights for, maybe a handful.
Chili mac with beef was incredible.
Well, and we had that,
Chicken pesto.
we had that first before we added our little secret thing. Like
Yeah.
that one, I found out midway, I think it was midway through the backpacking part, because I had picked him up at a gas station. We were eating it, and I was like, oh man, I get this bag of Cheez-Its.
Yeah.
I'm totally gonna crunch these up and throw these in.
I still dream
And
about these meals.
and I still buy it and eat it that way. It's so good.
It's so good.
And the chicken pesto pasta was just
Yeah.
phenomenal, just straight out.
The only thing we did was add salt, like they under salt, which I think is great because then you can salt to taste. So if you're gonna pack Trailtopia and you like salty food, bring a little salt shaker, but you don't need a lot, just a little. And it fed one pack fed both of us after a long day of paddling and backpacking, no problem. There's plenty of food.
And we had a dessert every single night too, but a lot of times
And
like
the
that,
desserts were pretty bomb.
the desserts were awesome. Like Trailtopia's desserts are.
And in the last 2
amazing.
years, they've come out with new stuff that I
Yeah.
wanna try. So
Yeah.
I gotta get back on that.
But we were talking one of the nights, at least, I think second to last night before we hit Fort Charlotte,
Yeah.
where we had triple berry night. Where we had eaten the night before, we didn't eat dessert because we're like, oh, you know what? If we wait, we'll both have a dessert the next
Yeah,
day.
it's pretty good.
And so we both had. triple berry
Peanut
night.
butter. I brought too many peanut butter cups.
Yeah.
Like I brought those little peanut butter to go
That's right.
cups.
Way too
Especially for backpacking, don't pre-pack your meals if you can help it. Like get the food on the road as you go, like at grocery stores and stuff, because your taste is gonna change. I pre-packed way too much food and I ended up getting rid of a bunch of it.
I would say like for your midday food,
Yeah,
like your snacks and
Yeah.
the stuff you're gonna eat in the middle of the day, because we didn't
Right.
stop to eat lunch. We ate lunch, but it was
And
lunch.
speaking of the backpacking, how much weight did we carry on the backpack portion as an average, and how and when did we restock? So I figure I had about a 20-pound base weight, which I'm way lighter than that these days, but back then that was about as light as I could get. And then I had about 10 to 12 pounds of food. So I was in the 32 pound range on a full, like 4 or 5 day pack. And we were using Crown 60s, or you had the
I
Crown.
had the Crown 35.
You had a Crown 35 and I had a Crown 60. Your Crown 35 was packed to the gills,
It was
but
like,
I still had plenty of
coming out
room in
all
the
over the place.
60.
I think both our base weights were about the
Every
same.
3 to 4 days, we would get into a restock situation, and we restocked at gas stations and marts, and we had some packages sent to us.
Yeah,
So if you're thinking about doing the Superior Hiking Trail, there's plenty of places to send packages. Like if you want to send them to a visitor center, or if you want to send them to what's the place in it starts with an F. Finland. Yeah.
The recreation center.
The recreation center in Finland will take packages. That was a good stop.
Yeah.
It depends on if you're going south to north too. We were going north to south, so it changed how we broke up our days.
The way I figured as far as the restock drops is that we broke up the trip into fourths. And so we had our initial food that we grabbed out of the van, and then we had a food drop at Lutzen, we had a food drop at Finland, and we had a food drop in Two Harbors. And those food drops and the food drop was extra dog food, our breakfasts, any other snacks we wanted to have just in case, little surprises, our dinners, desserts, and the fuel. And that was it. So like,
Yeah.
and that's where going back to what Eli mentioned with our like snack stuff, like there were things that I think like a lot of the stuff that I was like, oh yeah, I'll eat this. And no, like I'd packed a bunch of Clif Bars and Clif Shots and I still, or not Clif Shot, but Shot Blocks. And I still love the Shot Blocks. I still love it all. But by the time we got to like the, second week of being on the trail, I was ready to have, I was like
Totally
snacking on
taste.
peach mangoes and,
Oh God, they were good.
and like wintergreen, like lifesaver things and like stuff I just grabbed.
My favorite trail snack was those peach gummies.
Peach gummies.
Peach
Yep,
gummies. I could not, and they're so heavy, but I couldn't get enough of them. Like, so I can get like a pound of those. And then the Little Debbie oatmeal cream pie, which packed like so many calories. It's like I think a big one is like 300 calories. Yeah, just in a big one. It's so many calories.
And when because he was packing those in the boxes for resupply too.
Yeah, I never got tired of it.
And I saw him doing that. So the first opportunity we had, we stopped at a gas station in Grand Marais. Yeah, I loaded up on some oatmeal cream pies because they were so good. Because I'd see him eating them and I'd be like, oh man, those look so good. I still want one of those right now.
Yeah, keep the questions coming, guys. Yeah. We got about 10 more minutes of our presentation.
Well, actually, since we're waiting on a couple of questions, maybe we can make an announcement that Eli and I and a friend of ours are currently working on the book.
Yes.
So we are going to be coming out at some point down the road, whenever that happens. We are going to be coming out with a book that'll have kind of more details, a little bit about
so many more details.
Like so many more details as far as like our individual experiences in the trip, as well as just events that occurred, but also like perspectives from people that you didn't see in the film. Like obviously Eli's dad Kent will do more information from him, but like my parents also, and of course my mom freaking out about the trip the entire time I was on it. But like there are aspects of it. Of course, Kevin, who's the one who's helping us write the book, his aspect of it. So there'll be some other perspectives that you don't necessarily get in the film, you actually have as part of the book, as well as photos and things like that. So don't know when that's coming out, but we are actively working on that. Actually, we're meeting next week about
I do, while we got time, like I need to make a really heartfelt shout out to Cook Custom Sewing because Dan hooked us up with some killer gear. The spray skirt or the cover on my canoe was awesome on Rainy Lake. I know that the canoe packs that we had, it's like my favorite go-to pack.
I still use that thing all the time.
And just like some of the little bags and stuff like that, like CCS was awesome.
And Dan's just, he's an awesome dude. He walks the walk. He tests all this gear. He knows it works. He's out there constantly paddling and testing out products. So it's not, and he's based here in Minnesota, which is awesome about CCS too.
We got a question here. Oops, sorry. What's the next adventure?
For two of us?
Two of us. I don't know. I don't have anything big planned. I was going to do the AT next year, but COVID's kind of put a little damper on that.
Put a damper on all my stuff.
We got another question, like what type of shoes did you wear canoeing and also hiking? And I'm actually wearing mine still.
And I have mine, but I'm not wearing them.
So this is
it's still got dirt on it from it's the Vask Breeze 3.0. But there's a Gore-Tex version and non-Gore-Tex version.
These are the non-Gore-Tex.
Yep. And the reason we went with non-Gore-Tex is because we both knew that we were going to be using them for the paddling system. We'd be getting out and wet footing it. So we went with a pair that was not going to hold in water because we weren't too worried about our feet getting wet. The one thing I would say too, and a shout out brand wise, is Vask also hooked us up, both of us, with the boots, but also with a big care package too. Yeah. I got Dart socks from Vask.
Well, these went through this. They went through the trip, and it's been 2 years of heavy use, and they're still like the comfiest boots I've ever had.
Same thing. Like I still wear mine all the time.
I haven't changed the soles or anything. Excellent. But yeah, as far as next adventure goes, like,
It's all
I
kind
don't
of
know, man. I'm just trying to pay rent right now. Like,
just trying to live.
I'm not thinking about. I got way into like upland bird hunting and stuff this year,
Yeah.
like in putting my money in my mind that way. So maybe some like wilderness hunting trips is something that I've started to think about. Um, but I need to get back in a boat soon, and do a trip. You just got back from
I just got back
trip.
from our October paddling trip. That first
Yeah.
snowstorm we had that came through, we were actually coming out of the body waters and driving home that day. And I'll be doing a presentation on aspects of that trip on Sunday.
Yeah.
But that was my most recent like wilderness adventure. But I also have gotten kind of back into the hook and bullet world, and
Yeah.
I've also really dived into hunting. I went rifle hunting for whitetail the first time in like 12 years this year, and got a really decent sized buck. So I'm looking at expanding a little bit aspects on that as well as other types of hunting too. So I'm also kind of putting a little bit more of my time and money into that aspect of it. But I think at least for me, I had plans this year because I took 2019 off because I had taken so much time off for the Oda, Minnesota trip. So this year, 2020, I was planning on going up to British Columbia in the early spring to climb an unclimbed peak up there. And then in July, I would have been in France climbing with Greg Martin, who's one of our reps for Black Diamond. So that was going to be my two big trips this year. And you and I had talked about other trips that we had planned. Like we had talked about that Isle Royale anniversary trip.
We still might do trip together.
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
When things are normal again.
Yeah. I will say, like, in terms of trips, like one of the biggest things I've heard about, like the size and sort of the scale of this trip, like, is like, whoa, like how long did it take you to plan it? Like, oh, I don't think I could ever do something like that. That's so cool. And I really got to say, like, if my broke ass can do it, like anyone can do it. It's just about getting it on the calendar. Like that's the one thing about making trips happen is if it doesn't go on the calendar, you're gonna just keep pushing it off and pushing it off. And this trip only happened because I had no idea how we were gonna make it work, but it was like 14 months away, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna put it in the plan.
Well, and that was the same for me. Like, you know, I spent 8 years just hemming and hawing and planning and
Yeah.
because I mean, Sam and I, when he first came up with the idea, and then we talked about it, and kind of developed a relative plan for it, and then, you know, he got the job where it was going to take him out of state or out of the country for most of the time, and so and I still had this idea like this would be a sweet trip, and so I just kind of kept the back of my head and kept looking at it every so often, but I would just look at it. I wouldn't like. I'd plan a trip like, okay, if I was going to do this right now, how would I do it?
Right.
But it was more of the if I was going to do it versus I'm going to do this.
Honestly, I would do this trip over again.
Oh,
we were just talking about like there's
In a
a
heartbeat.
couple of little things we would change, maybe just to make it more fun. Like, but I would do it in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
I'd pack lighter on the bikes. We talked about possibly leaving the dogs home and going tandem in the canoe, just to go faster because tandems are a little faster. But taking the dog consideration out of it, so it's just less gear, less weight. And then backpacking, I would say actually slowing down. Like I would want to like take some more, like just take my time more with the miles, and like really like take in the lake more often and like have some half days, you know, and just relax. And I think just in general, I would do the trip again, but I would take maybe 8 weeks instead of 6 and just kind of like slow down and really like instead of just boom, 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 boom every day, clicking off miles.
Take like, you know, 4.5 weeks maybe of the backpack.
Yeah, just kind of slow down and enjoy myself a little bit more.
I mean, we were saying, you know, in relation to that, talking about leaving the dogs at home, like, I mean, it's hard for me to say that yeah, if I did this again, I'd be sitting at home because she was a big part of the trip. But
yeah,
as far as the biking is a great example. Like, I know I've biked from St. Paul to National Falls with my dog.
Yeah, don't need to prove it.
but for me, because I have a road bike, I'd be interested to just do that part over again without Senna, just to see how fast I go. Because like I know I was slow as hell going in that bike for pulling that dog because I had a much fatter bike and I had a dog I was pulling, but man, it'd be interesting to see what I had for the thing. One of the comments that they asked about the shoes that they said they used the Vasks for the 2 trips in the Rockies. And yeah, man, Vask, I mean, and people don't know, Vask is, believe it or not, is a Minnesota-based company. They're the same company that makes Red Wing shoes. And they're based down in Red Wing. And their boots are phenomenal. If you have not tried them out yet,
I'm a believer.
Yeah.
Like I'm a convert, for sure.
And I mean, people are asking like, how did you try to, choose the gear? And the reason I picked Vask because it was the only boot company that was made in Minnesota that we carried at the store.
And we got lucky that they're also awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tested because I got my boots before you did.
Yeah.
So I was testing out my boots, and I knew right off the bat that okay, these are gonna be comfy boots. But even just in the midst of the trip, like it far surpassed any thoughts I had about the boots. Like it just made me more of a believer during the trip while wearing them. So.
Well, if you don't have any more questions, we'll probably wrap this up.
Yeah. One of the thing I'll let you guys know is that we were just talking about this too, and realizing that there are a lot of things that we filmed that aren't in the film that we filmed on trip, and we're going to try and get a hold of those from Brenda if she's listening.
Yeah, maybe
and post them up on behind the scenes or things that didn't make it into the film onto Facebook so you guys can see those because there are a lot of kind of posting interviews that we did. One in particular at Fort Charlotte. That are pretty good.
Yeah.
They're pretty good.
Yeah.
So thank you guys all for joining us. We appreciate it. If you have any other questions or want to get a hold of us, you can always shoot an email over to ode2mn@gmail.com. That's kind of the Ode to Minnesota's page. Also, I obviously work here at Middle Mountaineering. You guys can swing by the shop or even email me at the shop anytime you want. If you're more interested as far as the presentation I'm doing on Sunday, I am doing a presentation on Sunday about paddling in the Binding Waters in October, which I just got back from, which is ripe with tons of different events, including drastic weather changes. So tune in for that. But otherwise, thanks Eli for coming around and hanging out.
I love doing these.
Yeah.
I love remembering.
Yeah, it's such a great time.
Yeah.
And stay tuned for the book because it'll be coming out soon. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. And we'll see you guys here the next time we do a video.